Right now, you can pull out your phone and know the exact temperature 10 days from now. You know when winter starts down to the day. You know when to plant, when to harvest, when a storm is coming, all from a device in your pocket. Now imagine losing that. Imagine your entire tribe's survival depending on knowing exactly when the frost would hit, exactly when the herds would migrate, exactly when the rains would stop, with absolutely no instruments, no writing, and no way to check twice. Get it right, and your people eat through the winter. Get it wrong, and they starve. This is the story of how ancient humans solved that problem, and some of their solutions are so advanced that modern engineers still can't fully explain how they built them. Let's start with a structure that shouldn't exist. In the fields of Wiltshire, England, stands a ring of massive stones that has confused historians for centuries. Stonehenge, built in stages starting around 3000 BC, using stones so heavy that some of them were dragged over 150 miles from Wales. For a long time, nobody could explain why. Then, in the 1960s, an astronomer named Gerald Hawkins ran the alignments through a computer for the first time, and the results were staggering. The stones weren't randomly placed. They were engineered to align precisely with the sunrise on the summer solstice and the sunset on the winter solstice. Stand in the exact center of that circle on the shortest day of the year, and the sun sets directly in line with the stones, on purpose, down to the degree. This wasn't decoration. This was a calendar built from 25-ton rocks. A society with no written language had built a machine, out of stone, that could track the exact turning points of the year for generations, long after any single person who understood the astronomy behind it had died. And Stonehenge isn't even unique. It's one of thousands. In Ireland, there's a 5,000-year-old passage tomb called New Grange, older than the Egyptian pyramids. Once a year, on the winter solstice, and only on the winter solstice, the rising sun aligns perfectly with a narrow opening above the entrance, sending a beam of light down a 60-foot passage to illuminate the tomb's inner chamber for about 17 minutes. The rest of the year, that chamber sits in complete darkness. The builders had to understand the sun's exact position a full year in advance, with no telescopes and no way to record the data except by memory and repetition, generation after generation, until they built something that would still work perfectly 5,000 years later. Across the ocean, the Maya built entire cities around this same obsession. At Chichen Itza in Mexico, a pyramid called El Castillo was designed so that during the spring and fall equinoxes, the setting sun casts a shadow down the staircase that looks exactly like a serpent slithering down the temple. The Maya had also independently calculated the length of the solar year to within a fraction of a day, using nothing but centuries of careful observation, passed down through a class of astronomer priests whose entire job was to watch the sky and never let the count slip. So why did ancient societies across 3 separate continents, with no contact with each other, all arrive at massive stone monuments built around the exact same problem? Because getting the season wrong meant death, and there was zero margin for error. Think about what a farming society actually needed to know. Plant seeds too early, and a late frost kills the entire crop before it can take root. Plant too late, and there isn't enough growing season left before the first frost of autumn wipes everything out. Miss the window by even a couple of weeks in either direction, and you're not looking at a bad harvest. You're looking at mass starvation through the winter. For early agricultural societies, tracking the solstices and equinoxes wasn't a spiritual hobby. It was the single most important survival technology they had, more critical than almost any tool or weapon. But megaliths only worked if you were already settled in one place. For societies that were still moving, hunting, and foraging, the sky told a different kind of story, and so did the animals. Long before agriculture, Hunter-gatherer societies developed what anthropologists call phenological knowledge, the ability to read seasonal change through the behavior of the natural world around them. The Sand people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth, developed intricate systems for predicting rain by watching the behavior of specific insects and birds weeks before a storm system arrived. Indigenous groups across North America tracked the migration timing of specific bird species, the exact moment certain trees budded, and the behavior of insects like ants and bees, cross-referencing dozens of small natural signals against each other to build a forecast far more reliable than watching the sky alone. This wasn't superstition. It was accumulated, tested data, refined over thousands of years by people whose lives depended on getting it right. A single elder in one of these societies could carry, in memory alone, decades of pattern recognition linking animal behavior to weather outcomes, essentially functioning as a living, breathing forecasting model, built entirely from observation and passed down through story before it could ever be lost. And then there's the case that might be the most impressive of all. Polynesian navigators crossing thousands of miles of open Pacific Ocean with no instruments whatsoever. Traditional Polynesian wayfinders didn't just read stars for direction, they read the entire sky and ocean as a single interconnected weather system. They tracked the rising and setting points of specific stars to know not just where they were, but what season it was and what weather to expect. They read the color and behavior of clouds on the horizon to detect land that was still below the horizon line. And they read the pattern and rhythm of ocean swells, felt through the hull of the canoe itself, to predict storms building hundreds of miles away, long before any visible sign appeared in the sky. This knowledge was so precise and so valuable that it was treated as sacred. Master navigators trained for years, sometimes decades, memorizing star paths and swell patterns through chant and repetition, because a single mistake at sea, hundreds of miles from any land, meant death for an entire crew. There was no room for approximation. The forecast had to be right. Here's what ties all of this together, from the stone circles of England, to the star charts of the Maya, to the swell readers of the Pacific. None of these societies had instruments. None of them had writing in the way we understand it today, in many cases. What they had was something arguably harder to build than any tool, an unbroken chain of careful, disciplined observation, tested against life and death, refined generation after generation, and preserved not in books, but in monuments, in ritual, in memory, and in story. When a Neolithic farmer stood at the center of Stonehenge and watched the sun set exactly where it was supposed to, that wasn't mysticism. That was thousands of accumulated observations, distilled by earlier generations into a single, elegant piece of technology that anyone could read, even if they couldn't read a single word. The next time you check the 10-day forecast on your phone without a second thought, remember what that convenience replaced. It replaced elders who could read a bird's flight and know rain was 3 days out. It replaced navigators who could feel a swell through a canoe hull and know a storm was building beyond the horizon. It replaced 25-ton stones, dragged 150 miles just to mark a single sunset. We didn't invent the ability to predict the future. We just outsourced it. For most of human history, that job belonged to the people who paid the closest attention, because for them, looking away wasn't an option.